In the fall of 1955, the Northwestern Railway was experiencing one of its slowest months in years. There were very little tourists coming to visit, and hardly any passenger or freight trains were being used. On a dull and cloudy day, Thomas and his friends were sitting in their sheds, telling stories about their past adventures and just having a good time. "Back when I worked in Doncaster with all my brothers," said Gordon, "we were revered for our design, our speed and our strength. Yes sir, we were the embodiment of an express engine. I find it quite hard to believe that people really enjoyed seeing a galloping sausage pulling their train," Henry said cheekily, leaving Gordon red in the face. Gordon was about to make a retort when Thomas chimed in. "Oh, I have quite the story for you all." Thomas was obviously proud of the story he was about to tell to the other engines. "Is it about the time you fell into that mine?" said James. "No, of course not. That was an accident. Now be quiet and let me tell you all about something that happened during my early days here on Sodor." The engines went silent, and Thomas began. "It was a nice, warm day on the island of Sodor. I have been on the island for 2 weeks at this point, and Edward was beginning to teach me how to pull trucks on my own. I'd begun to take short trains every now and again to prepare for the longer distance trains I would pull in the future. On my first ever long distance train, I used up all my water, and Edward had to come to my aid. I was taken back to Knapford Station. I filled up with water and shunted truck silently. I did feel quite embarrassed for letting Edward and the Fat Controller down like that." Henry opened his mouth, seemingly to make fun of Thomas for that, but Edward promptly shot him an icy glare. But soon after, I was called to assist Edward because he had derailed at some points on the express line. I hurried to the scene. Edward's front wheels had slightly come off the tracks. But then we both heard the sound of puffing, quickly growing closer, accompanied by Gordon's whistle. With no time to waste, I was coupled up to Edward. I pulled with all my might. Gordon was coming down the line, headed straight for us. "Get out of the way." I heard the loud squeal of Gordon's brakes. I was terrified, and so was Edward. But luckily for us, we just barely managed to get over an inch of clearance between Edward and Gordon. "Thank you so much, Thomas," Edward said with a shaky voice. I was too out of breath to reply, so I just beeped my whistle in response. And there you have it, the tale of how I saved Edward from an unthinkable fate. James looked at Henry, and Henry looked back at James, before they began to laugh. "That was really brave of you, Thomas," said Percy. "Oh come on, Percy, don't tell me you actually believe this rubbish," said Henry. Gordon, Edward and Thomas looked at each other and just smiled.